On the right-hand table, I open a little loose on the button with King 8 offsuit, firing out a small c-bet and taking it down. These little pots are really important, especially in tight games like small stakes fast fold games. So keep fighting for them, they add up in the long run. On the left, I open King 10 off, again a little wide, but we take it down. Another nice little pot. Every time this happens, we pick up 1.5 big blinds, which may not sound like a lot, but the value of picking up aces is on average only 10 big blinds, so winning these little pots is actually a relatively big win. Ace Jack on the left, I call pre-flop, and then I lead this flop. I prefer calling pre-flop rather than bloating the pot out of position with a hand which dominates a lot of the cut-off's opening range. And then I'd rather lead here than check call or check raise. We're attacking a wider range when we do this, and so it's more likely our opponent folds. Plus, the lead is a lot cheaper of a play than check raising, and check calling means we either have to hit our hand or lead at the pot later on, which has less success than just simply leading the flop. Jack 5 offsuit on the right is a loose pre-flop call, but my opponent is likely a fish given he sits with less than 100 big blinds, so I think I can make the hand profitable. And on the flop, another spot for a little lead. If I check, I have to check fold. Betting is very cheap and population overfolds here. And if they call, I can always pick up a straight draw or a pair, which is often good. I hit the 5, which is fairly good because villain will have a lot of ace-x, which will continue on the turn with a gut shot and an overcard. It's not ideal that the turn is a diamond, but it does mean that floats with hands like King-Jack with a diamond will now continue. And there'll always be some folds as well, which is the protection portion of my bet. And ace-6 on the left, another spot to lead. Paired boards are massively overfolded to by population, and my hand is not particularly good as a check call or a check raise, but I don't particularly want to check fold it either, or give my opponent a free card. You can see that these small donks get through a decent amount of the time, given how small I'm betting. You would think that people would play back, given I do it a lot, and have a visible VPIP of 36%. But they don't, so I might as well just keep taking down the little pots with my not so good hands. 7-4 on the right is a limped pot. I stab my gutter with 7 high. This time I get raised, but to a price where I can call. And on the turn, I pick up another straight draw, and the 10 is an overcard to pairs that villain might have had on the flop. His raise on the flop was small, so it could well include a lot of 9x, pocket 7s, pocket 8s type hands, along with some bluffs perhaps. So I think it's a good spot to bet turn small and follow through on the river if he just calls. I get there, but I'd do basically the same thing if I didn't. And you can see he folded very quickly, signifying that he did have a hand like I mentioned before. Ace-7 on the right, I like to isolate very wide as limps are almost always weaker players. They don't limp raise often, and when they call, they fold to the flop c-bet more than they should. So I can always just fire a small c-bet when I miss and take it down very often. Here he leads though, and given I have position, ace high, which could be good, and a backdoor straight draw, I definitely like a call. On the left, I'm betting big for value against villains ace-x and king-x. And on the right, after 2 weaker size leads, and given he didn't raise pre-flop, as he would likely do with his better ace-x, I think I have the best hand here the vast majority of the time, so I put in a raise to get value from 10x, weak pocket pairs, and draws. And on the left, I'm continuing to go big on the turn, but the river counterfeits my hand, so I just check it down. On the river, we're not often behind, but it's very unlikely that we get called by a king there, so I don't think it's worth betting. And king 10 suited on the right, I start betting small for value. I much prefer betting and setting the price myself rather than checking and facing a big bet with my hand being a bit face up. I get raised on the flop, which is not ideal from a tighter player. He can just have a flush draw though, so my hand is probably good enough to call one. But when the flush comes in, I don't think I'm ahead much, and so I just check it down and end up folding the river. And king 7 on the left, I'm opening the small blind wide and making a small c-bet when I miss to take down the pot. 9-3 on the right, I do the same versus a tighter player. An ace-queen on the left, I 3-bet for value and get a not great board, but I think the best option is still to just bet a third and take it from there. Nine three, I get called on the flop, and it's not the greatest turn to barrel, so I check this time. Queen Jack on the left, I flop the nuts, and so decide to overbet. In limp pots, overbets are pretty effective for value, because people often see it as a small bet, as in 4.5 big blinds, rather than see it as a huge bet in relation to the pot. And on the right, after the turn goes check-check, villain's range now appears quite weak, and we can represent weak Queen X, turned Jack X, and 6x type hands. And the bet-check-bet line is overfolded too, so I go for a little bluff, but sadly it doesn't work this time. Many players will fold threes in his position there, but not everyone, and not always, unfortunately. And on the left, Queen Jack, I continue going for thick value, but when I get min raised, which is very scary here, after I bet big twice, I nearly folded right away because it seems that we would have raised a straight on the flop or just called here perhaps. And there are quite a lot of combos of 10-9 and 10-8 that he can have, given that he just limped pre-flop. He's a weaker player, so I thought there was some chance that he would overvalue ace-10 type of hands and raise sometimes though, and I'm getting a really good price. So I did end up eventually calling the turn, but on the river, even the ace-10 beats me, and he does the thing where he bets nearly all in, which is a sign of strength too, so it becomes an easy fold. I think I would have folded anyway on a blank. Pocket 7's on the right. It may have made more sense to lead small here, but I wasn't paying much attention given that I was on the other hand. Check call is okay, and it's definitely the standard play. And once he checks back a double flush draw board on the turn, I think he has ace high an incredible amount of the time on the river, so I shoved the river for value, hoping to get a hero called. In this session, you can see that I played very loose, playing 35% of hands, but only 3-betting 2% of hands. I played a lot of very small pots. Small pots are where the population folds the most, and so it's best to just pepper away at them in those pots, and then just have it in the big pots. You can also see that my post-flop aggression was very, very high at 69%. So I chose the aggressive action when presented with an opportunity, 69% of the time. This is because of all those little flop stabs primarily. And so you can see I won very well in the session, but almost all of it came from little pots. I won one pot of around 50 big blinds and lost two of a little under 30 big blinds, but the rest is just little pots, jabbing away at my opponents and then trying to get out of the way when they put in aggression. So try to apply this in your next session. Jab away at the little pots, but remember that if your opponents start attacking back, they probably just have it. As always, if you have any questions related to this topic, or any questions at all, I offer a free coaching service in the VIP Grinders Discord server. Feel free to come in and ask anything you like. I look forward to seeing you there.